Hi, this is Paul Tyler, and welcome to another episode of the Reimagine podcast. Laura, we're going to talk about innovation insurance, but it's going to take a slightly different path than what people might normally expect. Do you want to set the show up?
Sure. So our conversation is going to have some roots in the ESG space, but it's going to be full of puns. I'm pretty excited to throw some in here. Today with us, we have Christian Heiden. He's the founder and director of innovation at Levo International. And his story is extremely interesting. Not only is it a business that was started by a 15-year-old, if you will, but it's also a family business that has been growing and expanding in a number of ways. So Christian, we're excited to have you on here today. If you would please tell us a little bit about yourself and Levo International.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm really excited. So Levo started officially, we were founded in 2017, but it really started as an extension of my Eagle Scout project. So Levo, we're a food security organization, but we really describe ourselves as a social enterprise in the way that we approach economic development and food security, really focusing on sustainability, not just sustainable, like environmentally sustainability, but economically sustainable and program sustainability. So kind of trying to move away from your traditional charity work and more on can we take the great aspects of business and combine them with economic development and social impact. So put that social impact first, but still use really good business practices. And so that's really where Levo started. It was a Boy Scout project. I wanted to do something that was going to be really cool. It was going to be international. It was going to have a long-lasting impact. And so I was, 15 in the fall of 2015, I believe it was. That's right. And I was looking for anything to do for my project. And the guy who ran my troop, the scoutmaster of my troop, had built a demonstration hydroponic greenhouse in his backyard that he had learned how to do in the Dominican Republic. And so I was like, that's it right there. He walked me through it. He showed me how the system worked, how easy it was to set it up. And I was like, this is my Eagle Scout project. And let's do it in Haiti because Haiti has a greater need than the Dominican Republic. And I know it'll work in Haiti because it worked in the DR. And that was it. And so then we were kind of off to the races, calling up organizations, asking them in Haiti if they want to participate. Ended up, my mom Googled Eagle Scout Haiti organization, and we got a random organization in the Central Plateau of Haiti. Called the executive director up, and I said, "Hey, you want a greenhouse?" They said, "Yep." And I said, "Great, we'll fundraise it. We'll come down." And so they coordinated the flying in, and we ended up not doing it as my official Eagle Scout project because the Boy Scouts were like, "We're not sending a 16-year-old. We're not sanctioning a 16-year-old going down to Haiti and building this. It's just not going to happen." So my father, luckily, calmed me down when that news came in, and he was like, "We'll just do it separately." And so my official project was for my high school, Northwest Catholic in West Hartford. And so I built my first hydroponic greenhouse there. And then we went down to Haiti, myself, my father, and then my older brother, who was a biology student out in John Carroll University in Ohio. So he just came with us. And that was a huge transformative experience for us. It really changed all three of our lives' trajectory in that initial trip. One, simplified hydroponics, a completely undertapped resource globally. I mean, so hydroponics is a growing field, but breaking that technology down, right? So hydroponics is really, basically it's an IV for plants. So you remove soil and you provide nutrients right to those plants' roots rather than them having to break down the soil first. And now what that enables you to do is build a closed loop system, and which saves up to 90% of the water. You can use about a quarter of the space, and it grows way faster, and the pollution, fertilizer pollution, and all those contaminants are not a major issue because it's a closed system, so you're using minimal fertilizer. Generally, it's commercial, right? So you think vertical farm. When you hear vertical farming, you think like lights. Just behind me in the space I'm in, we're doing vertical growing for our seedling production, and that's generally how hydroponics is done. But what that does is when you're doing it inside and you're doing it with all this lighting and technology, it's expensive, prohibitively so. But in reality, technology is super simple, super easy. You can do it with PVC pipes and with a bucket even. And so that's what I was exposed to, was that simplified hydroponics. So in Haiti, where we were first working, the average person in Haiti, and it's even worse in the region that we were in, the Central Plateau, less than $2 a day is the average for that area. And so that means you're in extreme poverty. So you're just grinding by. Anything goes wrong and it's over. Not you're on the street, it's over. And so the level of poverty is in part from all of the historical struggles that Haiti has gone through, but also all that's just that slash and burn farming, that lack of infrastructure that's been built. It's an agriculturally based economy, but their agricultural production is terrible because the land is so poor. It's a tropical island, not meant for agriculture. It's great. They grow sugarcane still, just like they did 300 years ago. But other than that, the production is really low. So the average family lives on a really small plot of land. They have a small amount of space. They got to walk a mile to get their water. And so when we were down there in Haiti the first time, we were like, holy crap, this is game changing. Because we can make this out of stuff we can find in the country primarily. Right, we got to ship some fertilizer in. We got to bring some special parts in. But for the most part, PVC pipe, buckets, all that stuff you can get locally. And so what the game changing aspect of that was, we were looking at this big 30-foot greenhouse down there. Myself, my brother, were like, this is too big. Right, the average smallholder farmer, right, they got a tiny plot of land. They have no resources, no capital. There's no way they can afford this ever. No matter, no one's going to extend them any credit to do this. Let's break it down even more. And so on that plane flight home, we were working on a family-based model. And that family-based model became our development model. So traditional development is done from a top-down, right? It's generally this top-down approach. You're gonna look at a country as a whole, right? The entire country of Haiti, and you're gonna say, food insecurity is a problem, so this is our solution. And this is how we're gonna exact it. And then you go from the top down, working, government, municipalities, and working your way down. And that's just a really ineffective use, right? So the American Red Cross struggled with that method, for example, just because they couldn't build that network. So the money just got wasted and was used ineffectively. Never mind the corruption that existed in that process. But what we realize is, if you take it on the family level, the individual family level, people want food. They need food. And that can not only be a source of food security, can not only be like that initial thing that we do, right? We're going to provide food, but that's also economic development. That's economic opportunity. It's educational opportunity. So you use food security as that leverage point. And so that's how we really started building, was off that concept is, let's start really small, hyper local, work in the small communities, and then focus on partnering, not just with the households, but with local organizations that have already built the framework. So Haiti, it's got about 4,000 known NGOs, the most per capita out of any country on the planet. Almost none of them work together, right? A lot of them are church basement organizations. A lot of them are small organizations. And so what we've been doing is being a network. The most important thing that we're building is a network right now in the long term. So our technology is so innovative, no one is doing it. And so we can come in and we can say, hey, church basement organization who's funding this orphanage in Pillon, Haiti, you need hydroponics. So why don't you guys fundraise, and we'll send our team from Hinch to Pillon. We'll set you up, and now that's a permanent food source in that community. And so as we grow, we keep adding these small organizations in a partnership with. So in Haiti, we got a couple dozen different organizations that we work with in some capacity, and that means that we're really hyper local. So we work with this organization here. We move 10 miles, and we're working with a completely different organization. So we're all over the place building this super hyper local model. And then from those lessons that we learned in Haiti, that smallholders, family size, hyper local, partnership based model, we realized that it works here in the U.S. And so we kind of did the reverse of the usual development model. Usually, you see something that works here in the U.S., you build a model around it, and then you try to copy that model in a developing country. We did the reverse. So we started in Haiti, we learned a model, and then we're copying it here in the United States. So we're taking our lessons learned from a developing country and applying it in a quote unquote developed country. And so this year, a big program, what we're spending most of our energy on, at least the US team, is developing essentially a network between food insecure, food desert, urban settings, particularly the city of Hartford this year, and networking them, just like we do in Haiti, with wealthier, better resourced communities, right? So it's providing an under-resourced community resources from outside. Because what happens in the city of Hartford, it's one of the worst, North Hartford in particular is one of the worst food deserts, but there's no one is coming to North Hartford, right? Those suburbanites in West Hartford, Simsbury, Avon, they're not coming into the city, at least not into this where the people in poverty are living. And so the idea is let's bring them, the people living in poverty, and their resources out and bring that income in without ever having anyone to go into the city of Hartford. And so what that entails is there's a lot of gardeners in Hartford. There's a lot of space in Hartford that's empty and usable. And so this year, what we're doing is we're taking that family-based approach, building a network of hydroponic growers and selling a subscription. That subscription being an upfront purchase of produce that these Hartford farmers grow. So not only are we creating a production center in the city of Hartford, right, in the food desert itself, but we're also bringing in income and making food security there's a permanent food security solution. So some of that produce will get donated this year, but a lot of it in the long term, the idea is let's make the market work for everyone and provide the resources for everyone. We don't want to rely on food pantries. No one wants to go to our food pantry. So let's make the food system economically feasible for everyone. And that's really what we're building here. So we're taking that family-based approach, that hyperlocal approach, and that partnership-based approach. We're partnering with NASA. We're partnering with Knox. We're partnering with Keeney Park Sustainability Project. We're partnering with Literacy Volunteers of Hartford, right? Our partner list is like 20 organizations long, and that gives us that minute, that hyperlocal access to different populations, and then we're providing the leverage. So I know that was kind of long-winded, but that's kind of the full story and overview of the organization.
Okay. Wow. Okay. That Christian, that was not your Eagle Scout project. Build a park bench on the
Not
side
quite.
of a river.
Not quite. It was a little different.
That was a lot. That was great. Not quite.
A little bit different.
It was a little different. Yeah. I think you should have earned a couple of badges, Eagle Scouts for that one. So just you alluded to it right at the very end. So how does this connect with an insurance company?
Yeah,
Nassau.
Yeah, I mean,
what are the connections here
so
now?
Nassau is just the community involvement is awesome. So Jessica Fail, the community outreach, is it community outreach director, or I don't know her official title, but essentially, I've been seeing Jessica around.
Her official title, it's Poobah. It's
Exactly.
Poobah. Christian, it's Poobah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so I've been seeing her around for the last couple of years. We've kind of crossed paths. I mean, the first time I met her, she was kind of she just gotten randomly invited so they could fill up the space at CCI, make sure they had all the seats filled. And that's where we first met and interacted. And just Nassau, I mean, they do a lot of work. I mean, you follow them on LinkedIn, you just see all the time. Nassau sent some team to, Hands on Hartford or some organization, and they're volunteering in the community. And so once we started posting on my personal and Levo's social media, Jessica reached out and she was like, we got to work together here because there's some great synergies between the sustainability, the food security, the economic development opportunities. So that's really been the connection, is all the overlap, the ESG, so to speak, that Nassau focuses on.
So you mentioned an important part of this and the economic angle, and looking at teaching, the saying, what is it, like you can teach
a man to fish. It's
the whole fishing thing that I can't remember because my mind is so.
It's Friday. It's all right. It's all right. Teach a man to fish. Give a man a fish, feed him for a day.
It's Friday. I'm distracted by.
Give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish,
there you
feed
are.
him for a lifetime. Yeah.
Teach a man to fish. Yep.
Yeah. Exactly.
There we are.
We're not.
Yes. So going on that model, can you talk to us a bit? I love it. You're so excited, Christian. Can you talk to us a bit about, the work that you do? You talked about the subscription based and bringing these systems to families. Talk to us a little bit how you educate the families, how you get them involved, teach them about growing their own food, and how that kind of information kind of gets back into the community.
Yeah. So what's beautiful about the simplified hydroponics we use is it's simplified. So what we call our 5-gallon bucket system, which is just bucket and Haitian Creole, is essentially a 5-gallon pail, like a Home Depot, Lowe's pail. You drill 4 holes in the top of it. You put 4 plants in that lid. And then what you do is you fill the bucket up with water and nutrients. And if you're growing a plant like lettuce, you set that bucket up, leave it in the sun on your front stoop, anywhere in the sun, and that is a set it and forget it system. Right? It's all the water and nutrients those 4 heads of lettuce need for the full growth cycle. So that is our main educational tool that we first start with. Oh yeah,
Really?
It's insane. It's insane. You set it up, you leave it. I mean, it's perfect for urban settings, right? Because you can put it anywhere. You can put it on a balcony. You can even hang it from a balcony. You set it up. Lettuce only uses about 1 gallon for its full growth cycle. So as long as you control for evaporation, you have all the water, more water than you actually need for lettuce or for kale or herbs, right? And so setting that up, that's our first entry point. And that's what we've been doing for the last couple of years. Last year, Sustainable CT, who sponsored our growing space, also sponsored our BOKIT program here in the U.S. And we gave about 500 families in the state of Connecticut BOKIT systems. And that's just, it's just so easy, right? We show them how to set it up. It takes 2 minutes to demonstrate. They take it home, they fill it up with water, they dump their fertilizer baggies in, done. And they get, they harvest vegetables for months, depending on what they're growing, and never have to touch it except to harvest it. So that's really our first. That's what I'm talking about. That's how easy hydroponics is, right? This is why every day we're like, why the hell is this not huge, right? Why is this not everywhere, right? Because you think about it, that's so easy. You get faster production, way less water used. So you think right now there's a famine in Ethiopia. Why are we not airdropping 10,000 of these systems and we have just tons of green production, right? It's a famine, so there's no rain. There's nothing to mess up the system. You just leave it and you got produce. And so the system becomes a relief tool, right, in the short term, because within 2 months you can have production, and a long-term development tool because a plastic bucket lasts for a decade, if not more. And so that's that first starting point. We start with that simple system. And our growers in our CSA network will get a 14-gallon version of that. So you get 15 heads of lettuce growing in a 14-gallon bucket. And that's, again, to set it and forget it. It's all the water that the plants need. Combine that. Then once we get them started, we get them hooked. Essentially, we add in the different components. So a lot of our growers this year have had some experience with us with the BOKIT program. And so then we walk them through. They come to the facility. It's an hour-long training to talk through our Victory Garden, which is the PVC pipe system we originally developed in Haiti, and our BOKIT systems. And then we give them the systems. Those are going out this week, next week, and the following. And what we'll do is we'll continue to do training. But for the whole course of the season, we're going to need to do 10 to 12 total hours of training going over how to grow certain varieties of plants. The beauty of the technology is it's a science. It's not an art form, right? Traditional gardening is an art form. You can kill your tomato in the soil in about 100 ways. In hydroponics, you can still kill your tomatoes, but it's a lot easier to not kill your tomatoes. And so and it's way more predictable, right? So last year, a lot of farms got screwed because the rain, right? We had an insane rain period. And so their crops are wiped out, done. But in our systems, they're closed off from the rain. It's a closed system. So we still have reliable production. So that's...
Okay, this technology is fascinating. I had one of these pandemic gardens. It was a lot of work, Christian. I'm telling you, I'm going to do that this summer. You've sold me. I'm going to try your system. So help us understand the technology. So the hydroponic technology, you grow the stuff outside hydroponically, right? No electricity, no lights. Let me ask you the urban method, right? Which, I've heard people talk about. You've got it going on. What do the economics look like for using some of these older big buildings in sort of second-tier cities as indoor farms? Is that a pipe dream, or is that actually something that's feasible economically?
One of the big difficulties of commercial scale farming is the cost, right? So outfitting those buildings costs a lot upfront capital, right? If you're doing really high-tech commercial hydroponics where you're controlling, because with hydroponics you can control every aspect, right? Everything. You can control if you're doing it inside, you control humidity, the exact amount of nutrients that are hitting the roots at the exact time, right? So you can add more nitrogen in the early stages to boost leaf growth, and then you can ease off of it a couple months in with your tomatoes to create fruiting growth, right? You can change the exact wavelength of light to encourage fruiting over leaf growth. So you can really control it, but that adds a lot of cost. And so it becomes really hard to compete in an agricultural space that subsidizes commercial farming, right? You just can't compete with California lettuce growers who have massive plots of land, or Mexican lettuce growers where they just take a huge plot of land and they fill it with lettuce, right? And it's, you go to the grocery store and it's like 1 cent for 3 heads of lettuce. What is this? And so you look at, if you go to the grocery store now, you can find hydroponic lettuce, but it's $5, right? $4.50. So it's just really expensive to run those facilities. That's kind of so we're taking the opposite angle. It's, okay, what's the bare minimum that makes this hydroponic? What can we cut away here? And that's the indoor growing primarily. I mean, behind me is our seedling production center. That's all vertical growing. So you take that indoor stuff out, you lose a lot of efficiency. I mean, we're not necessarily saving 90% of the water of traditional agriculture, but we're still saving like 60, 75%. That's still an incredible number. The production is still faster. It's still higher. So you have those tangible benefits, that is sustainable benefits. But no one, as far as we can tell, has attempted to scale simplified hydroponics. It's just not done. It's hobbyists. And there's a lot of pilots all around the world, but no one has scaled it, right? UNICEF or the World Food Program, they have pilots with hydroponics, but they're not, that's it. That's just their small pilot projects. So we're excited to be one of the first organizations to scale simplified hydroponics.
So you talked about partnerships, and you mentioned some by name already, but I know that you are a graduate of UConn's CCEI program. Do you want to talk a little bit about that program? We've had guests on from there before. I think it's a good story. It's a well-rounded story. Puts it back into the community.
Absolutely. So I actually transferred to UConn from St. John's in Queens. UConn's School of Ag it has this ARE, Applied and Resource Economics major, which is essentially just econ for the ag school. It basically is like, okay, let's take agriculture and use it as the fundamental basis of economic development. And so I was like, well done. They made that major for me. And so then the moment I arrived at UConn, I had Levo. And so I went to my advisor and I was like, all right, who should I talk to? This is what I'm doing. And so she directed me to Jen Murphy at CCEI. And Jen was like, oh, yeah, we got all these programs. We got summer fellowship. We got Accelerate UConn. And so I ran the gauntlet, right? In the first year I was there, I was like getting introduced. And then junior year, I just did the whole gauntlet. I ran through every single program they had. So summer fellowship was definitely the most impactful. So they give you funding. It's $15,000, some of which can be used to pay yourself. So that was the first time I ever got paid working for Levo. And then it gave us, unrestricted $10,000 to play around with. And then I learned how to pitch, right? I did basically the most important thing that UConn in particular has done for me is they put me in front of a lot of audiences and a lot of people. Right where Jessica met me was when I was pitching. I was talking in front of a group of people. And so we definitely didn't fit the mold. The standard mold, what you see in CCEI, most of those are your standard for-profit ventures. They got a technology that they're trying to innovate around and commercialize. So we were playing around with it, and CCEI did their best, and they did a great job at helping us network and helping us communicate. But the biggest thing was learning how to talk about Levo and talk about it effectively. And then of course the network, right? So UConn has a great network in the state of Connecticut in particular. So I'm a big UConn fan, big advocate of CCEI. It's just been a great experience for me overall, and great for Levo.
So what are a few tips that you could provide to the audience? Things that you've learned either being part of a family business, working both domestically, internationally. It's something that started as an idea. Now, clearly it's a passion. What are a few things that you would give as pieces of advice for somebody who has their idea and they haven't, brought it to fruition? They haven't sowed it enough to have roots take place.
Yeah. So it's always
what would you tell them?
To talk to people about entrepreneurship, because I feel like in America, we have this very glorified view of how great it is to be an entrepreneur and be your own boss. And it is. And don't get me wrong, I would do nothing else. This is totally, I love it. but it's a time thing, right? It takes 6 years to become an overnight success. And that's the big thing, is that you need to realize as an entrepreneur that it's going to take years, right? In this day and age, we talk about, these people who like build an app, right? This Silicon Valley apps kind of messed up this understanding of entrepreneurship, because you can scale immediately. There's nothing tangible. But in reality, you've got a trial and error, particularly in the space that we're in agriculture. It's just a lot of trial and error. I mean, for the first 2 years, we had a first successful harvest in Haiti, and it worked. And thank God for that, because if it had went like the next 2 years in Haiti, we would have quit, because we went from this great first harvest. We're like, this is incredible. We're going to change the world. We're going to be huge. We're going to get $1 billion in the next 1 year. And then we realized after the next round, when all of our plants died and kept dying until my brother went down and built new protocols out, that it's not going to be that easy. And so I think that's the big thing, is the biggest sign of success, the biggest indicator of success that I've seen in the space is just time and patience and determination, is that you're probably not going to get quickly the funding and the resources that you want. But that doesn't mean that they're not out there, and that doesn't mean they're not going to come, but you have to keep pushing. One of the big things that we are working on is impact first. So we could be a for-profit venture, like your traditional funded venture, but we really have tried to stay away from that in the short term, because we want to focus. We are still running it like a business, right? We're the CSA subscriptions, we're running sales. Our donors are startup capital. It's the same, we view it the same way as we're starting these programs. And I think that one of those things is people kept telling us we had to change our model. 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 And the answer was always no. And sure, we could have gotten funded quicker. We could have gotten resources quicker, but then we would have been a completely different company doing a completely different thing. And so I think that if you have a vision, you have to change your vision. You have to change your trajectory, but you don't change your fundamental principles. You don't change that fundamental thing that makes you excited about it, because then you're going to just hate the thing you create if you don't keep those fundamental principles. Change your business model, change it around, reinvent yourself, innovate. That's key to staying relevant, but don't change those essential components that make your organization or your company your company. And then working with family, you got to have healthy boundaries. That's a tough one. So it's worked really well. My father and I are very similar. So it's both a blessing and a curse. It works really well because we both get excited about the same things. It is always a tough dynamic when you are kind of directing your father, right? That's a mismatch, right? So when I'm like, yeah, I need you to do this, it's a very odd thing. But it's one of those things that you just have to understand. There's that family home dynamic, and then there's that work dynamic. And those two are in contrast a lot of times, and it's hard to shut it off. I visit my parents, and my mom's like, "Shut your mouth about Levo," and then my brother is kind of he's lucky because he's siloed in his space, and that's the critical thing. And so I think with family businesses, you got to find your roles and kind of stick with them, and don't bleed in. Don't let that bleed over. Can't say we've got that perfect. Can't say that I'm not saying we're the model of family business, but it seems to be working relatively well.
Well, that's good. Now,
right.
You said you're how old? 45. You got a lot of wisdom for those years
now. A little bit of
22.
experience.
Oh, okay. You're yeah. No, yeah. Well, you're clearly got your great head on your shoulders and values in the right place. Somebody told me that being an entrepreneur and starting a business is working 80 hours a week, so you don't have to work 40.
Pretty much.
So
you're right on the
I mean,
notes.
it's right. You got to have to define the business, right? Exactly. But you have to be building something that you believe in and you live in, and you want to live in. And I think you're doing that. Listen, I'm excited. I want to learn how to grow all this stuff out of my deck with water.
You got it.
So sign me up for one of your programs here. Yeah. Okay. Laura, he said easy.
I know. I'll be thinking about this program as I'm killing all of my tomatoes in my soil this year, and then next year when I become a client, it'll be good. But Christian, we're excited.
Yeah.
I know that we have systems being set up at NASA, and the partnership we have where we're offering the CSA program to employees. It's a big step in the right direction. And I know we're excited about it on that level as well. So, more to come on this. And I'm sure we'll keep people posted on our social media channels once the install takes place here at our building. But I always like to ask this as the wrap up conversation of the interview. And I think you may have hit on it a few different ways, but let's see if this answer is any different. Christian, at the end of the day, if you could put it into like 2 sentences of what is your why? What is your why? Why do you do that? Why do you wake up every day and do this?
That's a tough one. I think
it's hard, right?
It's because I'm convinced that the system that we live in can be a lot better than it is. And there is no good reason why it's not. And therefore, I'm not going to be able to rest until I've done my best to create that world that I know is possible. I think it would be my why. And I think that this is the Levo and the work that we're doing is the best way I can see myself achieving that. That'd be my why.
That's great. Well, listen, hey, this was terrific. Look forward to seeing more of what you're doing here in the community and our company. Thank you very much. And Christian, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they've got questions or want to sign up for the program? Is it your company's website?
Levo International.org is always a great way to find out kind of the full picture. You can contact us on that. You can send us an email. Info at levointernational.org works. Our communications at levointernational.org is our email as well. So all 3 of those would work.
Cool. All right. Good. We'll
Awesome.
stick in the show notes. So anybody just look at your show notes, click, and you'll find the information and links to the websites you mentioned. So listen, Christian, thanks for the time. Laura, it was great. Very different. I would like to be clever enough on a Friday afternoon to come up with some pun, but you have one. But listen, join us again next week for another very interesting episode of the Reimagine podcast. Thanks.